Distributed Agile. It is a must. It is one of the ways in which the teams are going to connect. Not having them every week, not having it every other day, every day. In fact, some teams are having it now twice a day when they're distributed, at the beginning and at the end of the day, and they're able to bring other time zones in when that additional time zone um, becomes accessible to them. Okay. I am just putting my delimiter here, and I am inspecting and adapting. My theory is that if I put these early, you will be volunteering yours as I speak. Sprint planning, of course, sprint reviews, all of those are familiar to you. Some of the ones that you might not be as familiar with, social events. It is critical that you are methodical about social time with your teams. Scheduling happy hours, as cliche as it might be 8 months after coronavirus, is still a very big way to connect team members. Showing share for social purposes, cultural holidays, all ideas that help you connect with your team members. If you're not doing those, give it a shot, start small and see how it goes, right? Um, Product backlog refinement. Refinement is not an event in the Scrum guide. It is an activity that's expected to happen on an ongoing basis. In distributed environments, we find that it is very useful if it is treated as an event, at least in part. So here's what I like to do. Normally, according to the Scrum guide, the team should not work more than 10% of their time on refinement, the development team, to assist the product owner. I like to split that in half. So take 5% of the time from the team to be event driven, and then leave the other 5% for ad hoc assistance that is needed for development. What does that look like? In a 2-week sprint, which is what most of the industry is practicing today. In fact, we just ran a recent survey that showed that 80% of the industry is practicing two-week sprints. The product backlog refinement event could be 2 hours per week, still leaving you with 5% of the team's time during a sprint for you to approach individuals and get their consensus. Right? So it leads to a very, very clear product backlog, which we're going to see is one of the key elements of being effective in distributed environments. Program planning, that's PI planning maybe, right? PO sync up. The POs traditionally, they don't sync up on a regular basis because they were working together with the teams and they saw each other in the hallway. Here, you need to have some form of PO sync up if you're distributed. It's essential. And the executives, same scenario. I mentioned this is not a scaling topic, but in this case, it's important for the executives to also sync up in order to address the impediments that are being escalated. So when you're having problems, as that problem escalates in near real time through the network of Scrum or Scrum of Scrums, if you're practicing that, the executives are meeting on a periodic basis to address any impediments that's affecting the organization. It's not possible now to walk by the office and poke your head in. You need to be more methodical about how you address this with your manager and with any additional executives that have an influence to help you with a problem relating to the Scrum or the Agile effort. Okay. Oh, let's go back and let's look at what are some of the events that you are holding. And you're holding retrospectives, daily Scrums, retros. Most teams have the standard of 5 Scrum events. Some have the SOS and release planning. Excellent. By the way, when we say 5 Scrum events, most folks tend to think that the product backlog refinement is the 5th event. The 5th event is actually the sprint itself. So you need to make sure that your sprint is time boxed and that you're generating an increment at the end if you're practicing Scrum. And Is that the same as stakeholder sync-up? It's a question. Yeah, if your stakeholders are part of the executive leadership, normally stakeholders also tend to have some client representation and other interested parties. In this case, it's about those decision makers that can help remove impediments, but it could include stakeholders that are influential in doing so. Yeah, so very good question. How long should the product backlog refinement be? Well, that depends. I hate to give that answer, but in this case, it really does. It should be a process that allows you to have enough product backlog items ready for at least 2 sprints. Don't go into 10 sprints because by the time you're all the way up there, it would have changed anyway. But you don't want to be caught with the next sprint and not having enough product backlog items as a product owner. So it should be the time that you need. Most product owners should be working on a daily basis on product backlog refinement. That is your primary role as a product owner. Having the product backlog refinement sessions with the development team is so that you get the technical expertise that you need to make that happen. That should not occupy more than 10% of the team's time per sprint. Okay. The refinement, the product backlog refinement to be defined priority along with the definition of done. Product backlog refinement to be defined priority. Yeah, so during refinement, you absolutely want to prioritize your items. You want to get them to ready. You want to have a general agreement on what it will be, what it will mean for a product backlog item to be ready for development. We tend to call that the definition of ready, and agree with the team so that as a product owner, you know everything that is needed in there so that they can accept that into the sprint.